A woman looked out the window and saw a freakishly tall, bald-headed man standing in her yard. But when it turned to look at her, she noticed that his face was missing, with no features at all, except for two up-slanted eyes. Welcome to the Paranormal Post. On this channel, we cover unexplained mysteries, paranormal research that will expand your consciousness, and stories that will make you cover your face with blankets at night. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, then please subscribe. We publish twice a week like clockwork. I'm Clayton Morris. The internet has many monsters. Some have human female faces and bird bodies like Momo. Some are only known through their overly edited pictures like Jeff the Killer. And perhaps worst of all, the one tall, pale, and faceless humanoid who lurks in the dark. That's right, Slenderman. The Slenderman's origin is quite clear and actually pretty simply traced. Back in 2009, a Photoshop user by the name of Eric Knudsen posted two black and white pictures saying that they were found in the Sterling City Library of a small town. Now, one of the two pictures was said to be taken in 1986, and in the picture you can see unsuspecting kids playing in a park. But far in the background, you can see a tall, faceless figure with what looks like tentacles. In the caption, Eric said that 14 children vanished that day, and the library where he found the pictures caught fire 1 week later. After the seemingly unbelievable backstory, the Slender Man was introduced in 2010 to all of the internet and to platforms all across the world, from 4chan to Creepypasta, the wiki, and even video games where the main premise is to complete a task in the woods without being caught by Slender Man. But surprisingly, many have come out to tell their stories about having chilling encounters with figures that strangely resemble Slender Man. In fact, author Nick Redfern has written a whole book on the encounters that resemble those of mysterious creature known as Slender Man. Now, in this video, we're going to look into a few of these stories, so settle in, get the blankets over you. Now, let's start with our first story today. A Reddit user named Sasky85 said that he was driving one day through the wilderness near the Canadian border. He was on his way home from his friend's house at around 4 a.m., pitch black. He mentioned that during the 45-minute drive, he had to pass by a dense patch of pitch black forest for roughly 10 minutes. After nearly hitting a deer, he decided to drive a little bit more slowly. We've all been there. But as he was making his way through the darkness ahead of him, he saw something that caught him off guard. He said he approached the exit of the forest where there is a left curve in the road and an adjacent dirt road with a white wooden fence lining it going up the hill to what he thought must have been someone's property or a home up there. As he was making this turn, he saw something in his headlights at the edge of the fence. It was a tall, pale, milky white creature with a bald head. Its eyes reflected back at him. It had no clothes on, and its arms and its legs were just as white as its bald head. He saw it for a second or two as it made a move to dive behind the fence. Terrifying. He parked his car, backed up slowly, pointed his lights at the fence to see if he could find any kind of movement whatsoever. Remember, it was pitch black, so any light might have caught this creature instantly. He said he was parked there for a little while on this empty road at 5 a.m. No cars at all. His heart was racing, and he says he must have sat there for a minute before he calmed down, caught his breath. He didn't see any movement at all. And he decided, I better get the hell out of here. He was worried he was going to be abducted or attacked. So he put pedal to the metal and got out of there. To this day, he says he still wouldn't have gotten out to investigate what that was unless he had someone with him or if he had a weapon with him. So the only description we have of this thing is that it was very tall, pale, bald, and human-like features, but no noticeable hair or eyebrows at all, and totally naked. Another driving encounter came from Reddit user Distinct Earthling. He said that on Christmas night in 2007, he was driving along on a rural road in upstate New York. He was on his way to visit a friend in a rural gated community. But as he approached his destination, he saw a figure that would give him nightmares for years to come. He says, I reached a section of road that had barren fields on either side and the woods were set back. Houses were probably nestled back into the trees. And as I drove, I noticed what looked like someone walking up ahead on the opposite side of the road, coming in my direction. Mind you, I was only going about 20 miles per hour the whole time, he said, so it was probably less than a minute by the time the walker came into a clear view. I love that he calls him a walker. Reminds me of The Walking Dead. He says, I got a quick scan of it from my windshield before my car, and it were exactly parallel. This is what I saw, and he says it was not a person. He says it stood on two long legs with long arms hanging down from its shoulders. It was strong looking, lean, muscular, but not beefy in stature. It looked thin at the same time. He says it stood at least 7 feet tall. It was light colored, not sure if it was white, tan, yellow, or grayish, he said. It didn't appear to have fur, but there was some texture to its skin. It wasn't smooth. There appeared to be something coming down off of its back. He says, I don't know what this was. All I can recall about its face is the small features that it had, but the mouth and the jaw were notably large, and it had pointed things atop its head, two things going straight upward with something mingled between the two things. I don't know what that is. As my car became parallel to it within a split second, I went from looking out my windshield to looking at it from my driver's side window. In that moment, its face quickly peered down at me, and all I remember was the mouth when it opened wide. Out came a remarkable scream that I'll never forget. He says it gives me chills just thinking about it. It consisted of a high-pitched, shrill shriek, enveloped by a deep guttural growl. Terrifying. I'm just getting chills thinking about it. Both sounds happened simultaneously in that scream. I kept driving all the while. This was all happening so fast that I didn't even have a chance to be scared or shocked or anything. I just continued driving, went past my friend's house, and drove right home. I called him to tell him what happened, and I just needed to get back home. I'm not coming to your house. I was probably running on adrenaline to get back home. Later on, I was in total shock after it sunk in. Had my driver's side window been fully opened, it would have touched me, or worse, taken me. I'm certain of it, he says. To this day, I still haven't worked out what this was. But these sightings are not exclusive to the United States. In fact, the next story comes from Scotland. While walking home through a park with some friends, a man noticed something hiding in the dark, he says. Me and my friend were walking around a massive park in my town. It was around 11 p.m. We were just walking around, having a smoke, having a laugh, being teenagers and stuff. By this point, it was pitch black. There are no lights in the park, and I'm a bit on edge because I'm not keen on the dark and I was kind of paranoid. But I'm going to just cut to the interesting part, he says. So me and my friend, let's call him Sam, walked towards the park, which were like 10 feet from the park at this point. Then there's this inexplicable rancid smell that physically caused me to gag. We joke and we say it was just this girl from school that we don't like, and we started walking into the park, being teenagers and laughing. The smell is only getting stronger, and I glance over at the small wall surrounding the park entrance. There's a bench, and squatting there was what looked like a freakishly tall guy. He appeared to be naked and hairless, crouched down. We both kind of stared at it for a minute before looking at each other as if to say, "Yo, can you see that thing? You see it, right?" And the thing started laughing like a 4-year-old girl. We got out of there and ran like hell, ran like our lives depended on it, and went straight home. We just laughed it off and kind of forgot about it. At least Sam forgot about it. This incident happened only weeks ago, and he says he's still spooked by this and refuses to go near the park any longer. I don't blame him. This next story is perhaps the scariest one of all because it proves that you don't have to be walking or driving in the dark to be visited by the mysterious tall humanoids. They are more than happy to come right to your front door. This Reddit user named Keanu said that he was hanging out with his friends at his house one day when they began hearing noises coming from outside the house. But when anyone went to check what made the noise, they would find nothing. So normally they thought it was some kind of animal on a night hunt. But when Keanu stepped outside for a quick smoke, that's when things got very weird very fast. He explains, "My friend began moaning in what I can only describe as pure primal fear, so I began asking him, What's going on? What's going on? And my dog started barking. I looked off to the right of this small porch and I saw a tall, extremely thin, ghostly, pale creature. It was a horrid human figure," he said. "Then I saw it scatter, moving like someone was moving inhumanly fast. It was gone, over the fence, into the green belt behind my house, in a split second. I'd say it was at least 7 feet tall, Humanoid was how it looked. I theorized that the creature was on my roof because there's no other way to describe the sounds we heard, and how that creature appeared so suddenly and silently. Now, the same person recalled an encounter with a friend of his that they had in a nearby tunnel with a rusty metal gate. Now, this tunnel was used as a place where teens would go to ghost hunt and be teenagers. But there was typically no one there because it was out in a very rural wooded area and not easy to get to. Now, on this occasion, the friends decided to go exploring there. And he says that a couple of his friends decided to investigate further into the tunnel out of curiosity. He also points out that his friend's story takes place chronologically prior to his encounter at the house. Anyway, he and his friends are walking deep into the tunnel, probably 10 to 15 minutes or so. And at a certain point deep in the tunnel, once flashlights are completely necessary, it also becomes necessary to crouch down because it gets too narrow. They said there were noticeable amounts of feces that seemed very odd this far into the tunnel, and it didn't look like any animal feces. This is when they thought that the tunnel could be inhabited by something other than an animal. He said that this tunnel, though, in particular, no man would want to take up residence here, especially with the small amount of running water that's coming right through the middle of it. Not exactly a cozy environment to snuggle up. They reached a part of the tunnel where it got even lower, and above, right before where it dropped down, it said, "Welcome to Hell," that someone had painted there, coincidentally. That's when they turned to see a tall, pale figure, hunched down in such a way that even while it's hunched, its back almost touched the top of the tunnel. That's how tall this thing was. They also say it was noticeably gaunt and thin. And at that point, they claimed it moved, and it suddenly turned tail and ran frantically down the tunnel with no regard for the water or the darkness, like it knew where it was going. Given the description of what they witnessed, I would say that these two incidents are likely connected because of their proximity, and the creature in question is likely the same one in each story, especially given the vicinity in which they occurred. The eyewitnesses think that the creature witnessed at his house dwells in the tunnel during the day and prowls at night. He says, "We don't go near the tunnel anymore." I don't think there's a way that this could be any kind of a coincidence between the two. What do you think? I think he's probably right. Now, our last story happens in Cheyenne, Wyoming, in the fall of 2004. A mother of two was sitting in the living room watching television around sunset when two of her dogs suddenly started barking loudly from the back room and looking out the window over the backyard. The woman thought it was very strange because her dogs never get agitated. Something must have gone wrong. Considering how odd their behavior was, the witness decided to investigate, and as soon as she opened the door, things escalated into weird very quickly. She says of what happened. "As I opened the door, the dogs barged past me as they usually do when they're excited, i.e. to chase a bunny through the fence, etc. On this occasion, they hooked around the door to cross the back of the house. I took a step out, keeping my hand on the doorknob of the storm door. They stopped between my two patios, and they were shoulder to shoulder and barking hysterically. Defensive and afraid at the same time, I saw in front of them, standing inside of my privacy fence, what looked like a bald-headed teenager. And I was thinking to myself, hey, what is this tall, skinny, pale, white, bald teenager doing in my backyard? And just then, it turned to look at us, just enough to show its right eye. It had a big, black, elongated, up-slanting eye. It turned to its left and vanished on the spot. The dogs then ran to the spot where it stood, sniffing the ground. And no, I didn't get any supporting reactions from family or friends. For the last 2 years, I've just put it out of my mind as best I could. I would raise the issue now and then. But when I hear reports on the news, like the UFO sighting over Chicago O'Hare Airport, etc., I'm reminded of my encounter. The surprise scared me so bad that I had to do Lamaze breathing to slow my heart rate down. I did not imagine this, she says. I recall feeling that I should look as fast as I can because this thing might disappear. It had no earlobes, no visible nose from my vantage point. Long arms, had huge long fingers, but I did not count them, she says. I don't recall its feet, but it either wore a skin-tight jumpsuit similar to skin color, and it may have had a shiny object on its upper left chest. All I could think that, at the time, am I going to die of a heart attack and no one will know what I just saw? I witnessed some paranormal activity in the past year, and I have to wonder if the incidents are related. It's a mystery. I'm certain that we are not alone in the universe, she says, but the public seems to be desensitized to this subject as though a disinformation program has been at work since Roswell. People just think a person isn't well if they've had this experience and won't be believed until they see it for themselves. I had always said that the universe is so vast, we can't be the only life out there. But I'm left wondering, why was I visited? Well, that's what this channel is all about. A safe place to share these incredible stories, and no one is going to mock or ridicule you here on this channel. So in conclusion, after seeing all of these inexplicable stories, those creatures, or I guess humanoids, can't be all hoaxes, can they? How can all of these people see the same things in different areas all around the world? Can they really be an urban legend created on the internet? Or are there really tall, pale creatures living with us? Let me know what you think down in the comments. And have you experienced something like this? If you like stories of the unexplained, stories the mainstream media won't cover, please subscribe to the channel. We publish 2 videos per week, and our team works very hard to bring these videos to you. So you smash that like button and hit that subscribe button as well. And we'll see you on the other side.